Wellness Warriors, is your entire house keto? Or are there some of you doing keto, some of you doing low carb, some of you still doing standard American diet? Like, what's happening in your house? I want to talk today about how do we manage and give you some ideas about what you can do to stay on track as a person doing keto, low carb, whereas not everybody in your life is doing keto, low carb. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet, Pat Chat Edition. I'm Violet.
And I'm Pat.
So maybe we could start with, is the whole family keto?
Of course not. Like, we have teens, 15 years old. I don't think like they have any real big interest in being keto. Although they do, I think they do. Our three kids, they do understand why we do it. Or maybe, yeah.
Well, two of them understand why we do it. One of them understands that we do it. I would say, though, that they eat much less carb than they used to. The question becomes, how do we manage? And how can people manage when you're living in a household where not everybody's eating the same way? You actually showed me a very interesting article where this woman was talking about the crazy of having to make dinner for her family. And like, there's keto, there's paleo, there's low carb, there's standard American diet, there's vegan, there's like in a table of 10 people, everybody's eating different. How do we do it?
Let's start with the younger kids. When you have, as a parent, control over what they eat, it could be a good idea to at least feed them healthier and have them develop reflexes to eat more healthy.
So what I find super cool and interesting, and I wish I could go back in history, my daughter, my niece, my nephew, all three of them started off rejecting sweet. 0 to 4, I restricted the sweet. But she was still able, if she wanted ice cream, yogurt, but no candy. She always said no to the yogurt and ice cream. But then from 4 to 6, she was allowed. She still said no. And I wish as a parent, I would have been like swift enough to figure out, and I wish I knew about keto back then, to understand that she was saying no to these things because they're not good for us. Right? And the other two did the same. They didn't have the restriction of no candy from 0 to 4, so different parents, obviously, but they often would be like, no, that, right? Eventually it came because you offer a kid enough times the same thing, eventually they're going to eat it. But I will say, till this day, my nephew, who is 12, I believe now, still leans more towards salty, savory than towards sweet. And for sure, he hates ice cream. How many kids you can say that? He hates chocolate. How many kids you can say that? I feel like if we paid more attention to our children, I think the young ones are the easiest ones to get on board.
My boy, I remember, till probably 6 or 7, he was scraping the icing of the cake off the cake just to eat the cake. So he was more, like you said, he was more interested in chips, although it's carbs, but he was more salty, savory than the carbs. It's somewhat easy not to overload them with sugar and maybe favor things like cheese and
low carb veg.
And low carb veg, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Also, my little boy was more in the veggies little plate than in the chips. I remember that. So
my niece, till this day, if you give her a plate of celery or a plate of lettuce, nothing on it, she's happy. But don't get me wrong, she does eat sweet. I do feel that if you allow your children to lean into what they're already leaning into, we could avoid a lot of the problems that we have. But again, we push sweet on our kids unknowingly. We do. From the youngest of young ages, I see children eating ice cream. I know I offered my daughter ice cream from the youngest of young age because it's dairy. What's wrong with that, right? Didn't not realizing how's that different than a candy? I didn't make the link at that point. But I do feel that you're right. There's a part where we have to kind of look at what can we do to help, and so what are the things we can do to help.
When you do their lunches when they go to school, so be more selective with. I remember when I was a kid, our usual lunch were sandwiches with lunch meat, white bread and that little cake wrap, individually wrapped a pastry cake. I remember my lunches were as I would consider it now, horrible in terms of health. So you have juice box. So easy. When we started keto, what I did was ditch the juices. They're worse than your soda. They have more sugar. So replace juices with like water, definitely. If you can, eliminate the fruits. Like the fruits are not the best. Replace, like, if they have a fruit snack, just put some cheese. The sandwiches, like, I know this one is a little bit harder. Maybe you can be a little bit more selective on your bread, but like
That's not going to change anything.
but that's not going to change anything. But like it's still like hard to put like to have a lunch that's going to stay like in a lunchbox for a couple hours, and that's not a sandwich. Although you can probably put a thermos and some meat and some, like, yeah.
Because I was just
Yeah.
going to say, like,
Yeah,
like my daughter actually never took sandwiches because she doesn't like sandwiches. So what actually ends up happening a lot of the time was she was having supper from the night before. Now, again, it's not to say that it's not, of course, there's still rice, there's still pasta. But the thing is that if your kid likes like meat, and your kid likes, like, there's certain meals that you probably could make, like vegetables and meat, vegetables and cheesy, like so you could make stuff that's gonna stay well,
Yeah.
because it's in a thermos,
In a thermos, yeah, totally.
right? The other thing you can do, and again, my daughter liked this, although looking back, it always had a side of crackers with it. Again, didn't know, but she often liked when you had like little cubes of cheese and meat and crackers, and she would like make little sandwiches and whatever. So these are all ideas that could stay, right? Because it's going to be, and it's fun for the kids because they get to build their own
Yeah.
their own meal.
For breakfast, eggs, I guess.
Yeah.
Although, like, we already talked, like, in past videos, like, there's how many, like, different ways to make eggs. I think by now we can pretty much 100% say that eggs are good for health. Like, if they can't be like too many eggs in a week.
I find
But,
the funny.
like,
I'm laughing a little bit because your boys eat eggs.
Yeah.
Does mine? No.
Yeah.
So like it's sometimes it does get tricky, right? Like this is where it's a matter of how old is your kid, right? But in fairness, my daughter, from the youngest of young ages, didn't like eggs. So it's not like she didn't have access to them. She just doesn't like them. So breakfast is probably one of the harder places to switch out if you have a kid that's focused on cereal.
Bread and cereal, yeah.
You know, like, yeah, how do you switch that out? But I do believe, again, it's about teaching your kids what's best and not strong arming them into liking or doing what you're doing, because at the end of the day, at some point they're going to move out and they will need to choose these things themselves.
Yeah.
And I want them to choose well.
And lastly, for young kids, like supper is the easiest. Like I said, I know my boys did like Caesar salad. So whenever I have a piece of meat and Caesar salad, they're happy. Broccoli, like, there's so many vegetables you can do different ways that they're gonna like. And if they don't like, ultimately, like, it's what you put on their plate. And but again, if they're young, like, it's not a problem, it's not an issue. Like, you need to get them used to eat vegetables, and like, it's something they like. You put cheese on broccoli, like, I was doing that like for a while, and like, they like it.
One of the things I wonder about is like little children, like they're so much more impressionable. They're so much more reactive. I wonder how many parents, I have no research on this, by the way, it's just coming out of my head right now, but I wonder how many parents actually have so much trouble getting their kids to eat their meat and their veg because there's always pasta or rice or potatoes on the plate. And it's like interesting that they usually go for that because of the addicted. And I feel like we don't even realize that our little kids are addicted to this stuff, and then they fill up on that and they don't want the other things. And if we don't know that that's not good for them, we allow it to happen. And of course, then we have children who are overweight and in metabolic distress.
But you have a good point. Like, I have one of my kids. He likes carbs. That's for sure. So before, like, like a little bit like you, like, we're doing like meat and pasta and like some vegetables. He was going for the pasta first, and even without touching anything else, he wanted more pasta. So, but right now, eliminating the pasta, it's no problem. He eats the vegetable. So that category of young kids, like, they're the easiest, not necessarily to bring on board, but like to at least have them develop good eating habits.
And I really do want to just clarify, if the rice is just not there, if the pasta is just not there, if the potatoes and carrots are just not there, at some point they're going to get used to them just not being there, right? Like, that's what happened in our house. Like, it didn't take long. They're just not there.
Mm-hmm.
I know when you're thinking about him, you're like, oh, like he's eating it in protest. But I think the other thing that I find super interesting, the way that my daughter likes her vegetables, no butter, versus your guys actually do like with butter. Like, so like if you put spice on her vegetables, she's much more likely to eat it. If you put like, so it's also that thing of like trying to figure out like what's the flavor profile,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe we're just not putting the flavor profile in front of him that's like the right
Yeah.
one for him. But we know, like, how many times does he go to my mom's house and you give him vegetables and you put the gravy on it, he eats it.
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe we just haven't quite figured out like what's the flavor profile that's going to work for him, because that could be something else to work. So okay, as we're talking here, we're learning stuff, like work on flavor profiles, because maybe each of you are going to have a different way that that vegetable is going to taste delicious. I'm not suggesting that you're making 17 meals, but what I'm suggesting is if I can cook it in a way that most of the people at the table like it, that's a win.
We have 15 years old now. Let's talk about teens. Probably the more difficult, like people in the family to get on board or to change their habits, especially if you started keto and they were like, when we started 3 years ago, they were like 14, 13, 14. So they were most, I can say they were all addicted to carbs, and they were liking, like they were having
I don't know if that's a were thing. I think they still are.
Yeah. Oh wait. Yeah.
No,
True.
they still are.
Yeah. True.
But I feel like they're more conscious of it.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they will still eat them.
So as parents, like, my question is, what can we do? Like, or what can we do differently? I guess to not necessarily because as a mom, a dad that cooks, like, you don't want to, like you said, you don't want to do like 15 different like meals.
So that's the first thing that I'll say is that I don't cook more than one meal. Well, okay, in fairness, I never cook more than one meal. Like for me, it's like what I cook is what I cook. I grew up with that. What I cook is what I cook, and you eat it, or you don't eat it. So the difference in my house was that you eat or you don't eat it. In my parents' house, it was eat it. So like I made that little adjustment, but it's like, this is the meal. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, I'll try to log that so I won't make that for you again. But this is the meal. And in all fairness, I have to say that in all the years of cooking for the 3 kids, maybe there were 2 meals where one of your boys decided they didn't like it. And not even both of them, like one on one meal and one on another meal. So it's like, okay, don't make that when he's here.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the first thing you can do for yourself is pay attention. If your kid actually doesn't like something, just don't make it. You're wasting money. You're throwing food away for no reason, and the kid's not going to eat it. Again, I'm coming from the school of thought. I'm not forcing you to eat, but understand you're not getting another meal. So if you want to go through the night like that, that's fine. But that's an option.
But we're lucky enough. Although your daughter is not a super fan of meat. My 2 boys they do like meat. What would we suggest to parents who like the half teens that like don't want to? I think like your daughter's friends, like they want to be vegan or vegetarian. So what would we do with like those teens?
It's about helping your kid to understand the goal. I totally understand the desire that we have to help animals. I understand that our animals that are raised for food are not always treated appropriately. And the only steps that I can take to help my daughter to feel comfortable is like, shopping at a farm where we know that they're treating their animals okay. Not everybody has that access to do that. So that's like just one part of the puzzle, right? Like not everybody has that, and I get that. The other thing though is this, and I firmly believe this. If I'm alive and I'm healthy, I can speak out and I can target those places that I know are not treating the animals properly, get attention there so that something has to change. Making myself sick doesn't change that. So this is the conversation that I've had with my daughter and the boys, that be healthy first and then you can fight for everybody. I think that in terms of like the choices that their friends make, look, and I'll even talk with my daughter because she's not a big fan of meat, and it's not because she's trying to be vegan or vegetarian or anything. She just doesn't like meat, right? But the conversation that she and I have is very basic. It's try to eat enough. And my goal is to give her an amount that I think will build the body that she's currently sitting in. And when she eats more than that, I'm extremely happy. And when she eats what I give her, I'm extremely happy. And you know what? If she doesn't eat what I give her today,
She'll get
the
more tomorrow.
conversation isn't, you know, like I'm upset. It's more like, try to eat more tomorrow, right? Sometimes it's the way I cooked it. Sometimes she's just not hungry. Sometimes she had a snack before and I didn't know.
But again, like we also need to be conscious that what actually they need is not as much as we often think. You need to get back to weighing, like, or at least evaluate the amount of protein they need, because like of course you can like put that steak big like that. Oh, I know I have one of my son that can eat it, but the other one is a little bit like your daughter. He likes meat, but he's more reasonable in his quantity of meat he eats. So, but I think like for sure, like we like if they're teens, they have access to the pantry, they have access to the fridge. If like they don't eat at supper, they're gonna eat something else later. It might be the healthiest choice. But I think for that group of kids, like we need to educate them to make better choices. So
And I do think that like you're talking about my daughter and the son you're talking about, like they, at the minimum, I'm happy to say, clicked into the idea, eat to satiation. And they don't overeat. Neither one of the two of them, right? They stop when they've had enough. And how do we know that? Because it could be pizza. It could be fried chicken. Like it could be their favorite meal and they'll be like, yeah, I had enough. Could be tacos. Like this doesn't matter what it is. When they've had enough, they stop eating. So like this like is a good sign that they're at least starting to understand like what's the goal of food.
of course my two sons like or have sweet, like they have sweet tooth, but one of them is getting much better at balancing his dessert. So instead of having like a big oatmeal cookie at lunch and another one at supper before he was going to bed, he decided to cut them both in half. So he has like half of it at lunch, half of it before going to bed.
Both of our kids understand the concept, and at different points in time you see where like you can see it working where they make a choice and you can tell that they're like kind of thinking about it. This is why I don't have a problem like buying smaller quantities of like junky things and knowing that I'm going to end up throwing it away in the house, because I'd rather her have access and then I toss it and she didn't feel deprived and that was her choice, than not having it there and then when I bring it in she's going to eat all of it because she hasn't had it for such a long time. And I feel like she's adapted herself to like to start thinking that it doesn't have to be all the time. And I feel like I feel like they're both doing that.
Yeah.
Right? They're both adapting themselves to this idea that it doesn't have to be all the time. It just
And if it's just that, it's a good thing. Like we said, you don't need to bring them into keto. You just need to educate them like with the bad effect of sugar. They're gonna like if it's like us, we're talking about that all the time. So they hear that sugar is bad, and they're gonna reflect and make better choice in their eating habits. The next family member, what about the spouse? Like I don't want to say husband, but I kind of feel like in probably like 80% of couples, families out there, I have a feeling it's the husbands that are not gonna be the husband's boyfriend that are not gonna be on board with keto. But maybe I'm wrong. But like I feel like in your like the people that commenting are more like wives and girlfriends. Aren't you lucky?
it could be I'm not going to say no, it could be. Why am I doing it? So let's start with me. Like if I'm the person who walks in the door, why am I doing it? Well, because either I have weight to lose or some metabolic situation to solve. And then the question becomes, well, does my spouse? So it's like right away, like even if my spouse has weight to lose or some kind of metabolic issue to solve, am I now saying you no longer have the right to make any choices because I've figured something out? And that wouldn't be fair, right? That's like my doctor says to me, Violet, you need to take this medication for your whatever. And I come home and say, well, you have to start taking it too. Like, no, right? Like each of us is an individual. And I think it's important for us to come to this decision on our own. So 100% when I started, because I did start first, I had a hip issue that I was trying to solve. And you know, we did discuss what I was planning to do. You weren't negative on it, but you just were like nothing on it. It was like, if that's what you're gonna do, that's what you're gonna do. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a stop me situation, but it wasn't oh, that sounds fun. eventually, I think that if you just live your life, the people around you are going to, so your spouse is going to see that you're doing better. I think what's scary and what's difficult and what's hard is when they see you doing better and then some kind of jealousy creeps in and they try to sabotage. I'm so lucky and happy that you didn't do that to me. But I do hear some stories that sound like that's what's happening, right? Like kind of this, how dare you lose weight and look better than me now situation happening, when like rather than say, how dare you, join me, right? But so I feel like that might be the one hiccup that can happen if you have someone that rather than sees what you're doing, gets impressed and says, hey, I can do that too.
So ladies out there, go get your husband and have like this watch with us this part right now, because you're right. It's true that at the beginning I was like, oh, okay, like I wasn't like super excited, but I wasn't negative either. I think like every good intention of especially being healthier is worth considering, but like even if you do it with me, like at first you cut out the added sugar, you cut out the dessert, then you cut out like the pasta and the rice, you're gonna end up after a few weeks not even wanting them. And okay, I'm like right there, so why not just like go fully on? And that's what I did. But it's not that bad, like not having pizza or not having pasta. You have nice meats, you have nice like I already like said, you develop new tastes that you're gonna like actually. And when you go back to eating that old stuff, like just sometimes I do cook like penne for my boys and I eat one pasta, but I can't like just can't believe I was eating that before. Okay. It's crazy like that. So yeah, like boys out there, like it's not that bad.
Actually, it's interesting you say that because like I do remember the first time that I had a strawberry after being keto for I can't remember how many months now. I think it was April. Oh, we were on vacation, so April, May, June, July. So probably like 3 months in, and I ate a piece of strawberry, and it was just like in this sugar like shock thing happening. Like, whoa, it's so sweet. And I think I gave it to my daughter, and you were like, "This is the blandest like that," and it was like for me it was like. And for them, it was like, this is so bland. And I remember, and I don't remember who I gave it to, but passed it to the other person to be like, can you believe she's saying this is sweet? And everybody, it was consensus, bland, mommy. and I was like freaking out. So I do think that your tastes change, and it's gonna be a process, right? So do I think you need to push your spouse? No. You know what? You can't force anybody to do anything.
Maybe do with your smaller kids, especially if you cook for your spouse, like you can bring on some changes maybe to their plate, a little bit less rice, a little bit less pasta, a little bit more vegetables. I don't know, like for sure also the adults are tricky to get on board, because first of all, like they usually don't know they're addicted to carbs. So whenever I talk to colleagues, to friends, oh, there's no way they would cut like out the sweet, the dessert, or the pasta, and like this makes no sense what we're doing. And so it can be. I do understand it can be hard, like trying to get your spouse on board, like on being healthier.
But is it your job?
But
is it your job to get your spouse on board to be healthier? You know, like I think the thing that I'm just kind of trying to point out here is that if your spouse doesn't want to do this, even if they're doing it in the house with you, when they leave, they have money. They're going to buy and eat whatever. Like, why am I going to kill myself trying to convince you of something when I know you're going to walk away from me and do whatever you want? That being said, if I'm cooking supper, you better believe I'm cooking one meal. I've said it a bunch of times today. I'm cooking one meal. However, does it mean that if everybody else is eating rice and I'm the only person not eating rice, I'm not going to make the rice? I'm going to make the rice. Why? I'm not going to eat any, right? I know that, and this is just like, we have 2 different households, kids grown up in very different backgrounds, French Canadian versus a Caribbean Canadian, like completely different backgrounds, and yet both of our kids have figured out that what we're doing is for health and that is actually better. And every once in a while we see them applying some stuff, and we didn't force either of them, and we didn't need to force either of them, because guess what, at some point they're going to go off into the world and have to make these decisions for themselves. And I do want them to make good decisions. but it needs to be coming from internal. I can only teach you, right? If I try to strong arm you into doing it, but as soon as mommy's not there, you're going to do whatever. And that's not what we want. We want them to do it because they understand it's better.
And for sure, like all of us encountered or will encounter, like the friends, the colleagues that are going to try to discourage us. There's no, like, it's not a point of trying to convince them, like, either to get into keto, but like, how do we manage them? Or how do we manage us with them? I would say.
So when I invite people to my house to eat, I cook what they're going to eat. It's not my job to make you better. It's your job to eat a certain way and my job to eat a certain way. So when I invite you to my house to eat, I'm going to have things that you will eat that I would have normally put out for a party. And then I'm going to have what I plan to eat. If people eat what I plan to eat, terrific. If people eat the other food, terrific. I don't like waste. As long as at the end of the night, all the food is gone, I'm a happy person. But am I going to just make keto foods when I have company? No.
Okay.
Right? I'm going to cook normally, right?
But again, when you say just keto food, if, for example, it's summertime, like you barbecue, you have steaks on the barbecue, you have chicken on the barbecue, you put up vegetables, or a big salad. Like, I feel, especially for
There
summer,
will
it's
be
like,
rice.
oh yeah, for the
Caribbean.
Yeah, for the Caribbean people, there will be rice.
There
for
will
sure.
be rice,
But-
right? Like I'm being very honest. There will be rice.
but it's
If
not
there's
like,
going to be children there will be French fries.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell them what their children are supposed
But
to
you're
eat.
adding a little bit of stuff for them. You're not cooking or making completely different meals.
Yeah, I'm adding so
You're
I'm
adding
making my
stuff.
food and then I'm adding what I know they're going to want,
Yeah.
right? When I go to
Yeah,
someone
good
else's
point.
house, this is a different story. When I go to somebody else's house, then it's a matter of, first of all, understanding what they plan to make before I go, because thalassemia, I can't eat any red meats. So I want to know, what are you making? And if there's going to be some kind of white meat there, okay, great. Will there be salad? Honestly, I can get by on a piece of meat and salad. Like, I'll be fine. However, if they're not making anything I can eat, but I still want to see the people, I'm going to arrive after supper. I don't care. I'm not there to eat, right? And trust me, like, food is so not my thing. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm not there to eat. Like, for me, that would be my go-to right away. It's like, if you're not making something that I think I'm going to be okay with,
Don't
Don't worry
shy to
about it.
ask. Don't be shy to ask, unless like it's like somebody you don't know and you go. I don't know, but like if you go to a friend's place, like don't like ask. I remember like one day I went to it was during the day, a little society games like afternoon, and like my colleague my colleague that invited us. It was like, oh, there's gonna be guacamole, and oh, guacamole, fine. Like it's like avocado and tomato, so I was fine with that. But like, I knew like they would have chips, so I just brought my bag of pork rinds. Like I brought 2 bags of pork rinds, and they asked questions. I said, yeah, no carbs there, full of carbs there. I'm eating that with the guacamole, and there was no problem. So little like things you can do when you go to other places.
so that's a good point, because if you're going to a friend's house, your friends know you.
Yeah.
They want you to be healthy so you can stick around forever. So obviously that's the other part, is that of course you can just let them know, like, okay, I'm not eating carbs, so I'm gonna bring my whatever because that's what you're making, right? And again, it's nobody's gonna care. They want to see you. They don't care what you eat. They want to see you. I think the best thing we can all do is be the good example,
Yeah.
right? And if you're living your life and having a good time and having energy and being able to like do what you want with your body because you feel good, there are going to be some people that are going to look at you and go, oh, okay, maybe there's something to look at there. And there's going to be other people that are going to look at you and be like, I prefer to eat my chips. And that's fine. It's not my job to convince you.
If you want to be keto, but you're not the one that's cooking in the household,
Okay.
maybe you might have a problem. Maybe if especially if you have a spouse that doesn't want like or that doesn't believe in what you do, well, of course, like you need to take care of yourself. I think at this point.
So if you want to be keto, but your spouse is not cooking keto, only eat the parts that you can eat. I mean, honestly, again, is this a sabotage situation? You have to ask yourself that, right? Like, are you not cooking or what I can eat at all? So like everything you're putting extra sugar on it, like to be a, I want to say jerk, right? Or is it just that like you're cooking what you like and like just not thinking. So if you're not thinking, it's easy. Add a vegetable, add a like whatever, make a salad. Like it's not hard, right? There's going to be some kind of meat, some kind of side dish. Make sure that there's a side dish that your spouse can have. Right? So I don't think that that's even a reason or an excuse. Like it's not the flip side, right? If you only make carby things and you're actually saying I don't get to eat. And like there's no question, like I said, are you trying to sabotage me? So keto for the whole family, not necessary. Keto for the people who are interested in doing keto, I think is the actual answer. Hope you guys enjoyed this video from Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet, Pat Chat Edition, t-shirts, Patreon, linked below. Thanks for watching with us, guys. Can't wait to talk to you again next week.
See you next week.